So, is it still possible to travel Europe on $5 a day? The idea is romantic, it's adventurous. And in 2026, it's a complete and utter fantasy. It's a ghost story that backpackers tell around a hostel common room. A myth born in the 1950s that has somehow stubbornly refused to die. But clinging to this myth isn't just outdated, it's dangerous. It sets travelers up for failure, disappointment, and in some cases, genuinely risky situations. In this video, we're going to pull back the curtain and expose the brutal economic reality of what it actually costs to travel in Europe today. We're not going to talk in vague terms, we're going to do the hard math. And by the end, I will give you the real bare minimum number you need to survive a European backpacking trip in 2026. This isn't the number to have a good time, this is the number to simply not fail. Let's be brutally honest. The $5 a day dream dies the second it hits the spreadsheet. Every single travel expense falls into one of three major categories: accommodation, transportation, and food. To see why this budget is a fantasy, we just have to look at the real-world, on-the-ground prices for 2026. First, let's talk about accommodation. Where are you going to sleep? The cheapest, most common option for a budget traveler is a hostel dorm bed. In super affordable parts of Europe, like the Balkans, you can still find a bed for under $15, and sometimes even as low as 9 to 10 euros in cities like Belgrade. But in most of Eastern Europe, you should expect to pay between $20 and $40 per night. Head west to cities like Paris or Amsterdam, and you're looking at $40 to $75. And on a summer weekend, prices can skyrocket to over $100 for a single bunk bed. Let's do some simple math. Even at a cheap price of $25 a night, a $5 daily budget puts you $20 in the hole before you've even had breakfast. To make the numbers work, your accommodation cost has to be zero. Not low, zero. We'll talk about what that entails in a minute, but spoiler alert, it involves a lot of risk and depending on the kindness of strangers. Next up, transportation. How do you get from city to city? The budget traveler's best friends are companies like Flixbus or BlaBlaCar. A typical intercity bus journey will often set you back anywhere from $10 to $30. A regional train might be $15 to $50. A single one-way ticket for a budget bus can cost more than your entire $5 daily allowance, sometimes by a factor of 5 or 6. So, again, for your $5 budget to have any hope, your transportation cost must also be zero. You can't spend a single dollar moving from one city to the next. Finally, we have food. This is the most flexible category, but even here, $5 is pushing the limits of human survival. Yes, you can go to a supermarket like Lidl or Aldi and buy a loaf of bread, some cheap cheese, and a packet of pasta. If you are incredibly disciplined, you might be able to eat for about $10 a day. But let's be clear, this is a diet of desperation, purely carbohydrates and preservatives to keep your body moving. And if you spend $5 on food, that leaves exactly $0 for a place to sleep and $0 to get to your next destination. It's not an opinion. It's a mathematical certainty. In 2026, for a typical independent backpacker, it is effectively impossible to pay for accommodation, transportation, and food on $5 a day. To even attempt it means you have to get at least two of the three main pillars of travel cost for free. So, what happens when you try to get those things for free? This is where the romantic idea of adventurous travel meets the harsh reality of a survival situation. To get free accommodation, many people think of couch surfing. But since it introduced a mandatory subscription, its user base has changed, and many hosts in popular cities are bombarded with requests. You're often better off trying non-profit alternatives like Be Welcome or Trust Routes. When it works, it's amazing. You meet incredible people and get a real insight into the local culture. But what's your backup plan when you send out 10 requests and get 9 rejections and 1 maybe? Another option is a volunteer exchange through platforms like Workaway or Worldpackers, where you work a few hours a day in exchange for accommodation. Your other option is wild camping, but this isn't always a simple solution. While countries like Norway, Sweden, and Scotland have right to roam laws that allow it, in most of Europe, it's illegal. Getting caught in a country like Austria or Italy can result in a fine that would instantly obliterate not just your daily budget, but your weekly or monthly budget. For free transportation, your only real option is hitchhiking. There's a certain romance to it, sure, but it's incredibly unreliable. You could be on the side of a highway for 30 minutes, or you could be there for 8 hours. It's impossible to plan a schedule around it. And more importantly, there are safety risks. You're getting into a vehicle with a complete stranger, putting your trust and personal safety entirely in their hands. It's not a strategy, it's a gamble, every single time. These aren't travel hacks. They are high-risk survival mechanisms with a high rate of failure, and failure has a cost. If you're finding this reality check useful and want more honest travel opinions, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're all about real travel here, and I'd love to have you as part of the community. So, if $5 a day is a dangerous myth, what is the real number? What is the actual bare minimum, ultra shoestring budget you need to survive in Europe in 2026? After analyzing current prices for hostels, budget transport, and groceries, the floor, the absolute minimum you can get by on without resorting to high-risk strategies like hitchhiking every day, is between $50 and $75 per day for most of Europe. However, very frugal travelers in cheaper regions like the Balkans can still realistically live closer to $30 to $40 per day. Let's break that down, because it's important to see what that number actually buys you. First, accommodation, about $25 to $40 per night. This gets you a dorm bed in a decently rated hostel, but probably not in the city center of a major capital. This is your single biggest expense, and it eats up half of your budget immediately. Second, food, about $10 to $15 per day. This is not for eating out. This is a strict supermarket budget. You'll be cooking your own meals in the hostel kitchen. Think pasta, rice, eggs, and vegetables from the local market. You might be able to afford one coffee or a street pastry, but that's it. No restaurant meals, no casual beers with your new hostel friends every night. Third, transportation and activities, about $10 to $20 per day. This is an averaged out cost. This isn't for daily travel. This is for a $30 bus ticket every 3 days, or a city metro pass. This category also has to cover everything else: laundry, a museum ticket, anything you actually do. Most of your activities will have to be free, like walking tours or just exploring the city on foot. This $50 to $75 budget is the new zero. It's the floor. It is a budget of constant vigilance, where you are tracking every single dollar. It's not glamorous. It is, however, sustainable and safe. And crucially, this number varies wildly by region. In Eastern Europe, countries like Poland, Hungary, or Romania, you can realistically stick closer to that $50 a day mark. In Southern Europe, Spain, Portugal, Italy, you're looking at more like $60 to $80 a day. And in Western and Northern Europe, places like France, Germany, or Scandinavia, a realistic minimum budget starts at $80 to $120 and goes up sharply from there. Trying to survive on $50 a day in Switzerland or Norway is extremely difficult. Here is the final, most brutal truth about why the $5 budget is a trap. It has no margin for error. It doesn't account for what I call the cost of failure. What happens when your couchsurfing host cancels on you at the last minute? You have to book a last-minute hostel, which will cost you at least $40, wiping out more than a week of your budget. What happens when you can't get a hitchhike before it gets dark? You have to buy a last-minute bus ticket for $30 and maybe a taxi to a hostel. Another week's budget gone. What happens if you get a toothache, lose your phone, or have your wallet stolen? With a $5 budget, you have zero emergency funds. You are one piece of bad luck away from being completely stranded. The goal of budget travel should be to travel smarter, not to live like a destitute person. It's about maximizing your experience while minimizing your cost. But there is a point where minimizing your cost actively destroys your experience. You spend your days worrying about where you'll sleep, or if you can afford to eat, not enjoying the culture and history around you. You're not traveling. You're just practicing homelessness in a foreign country. The romance of traveling on a shoestring budget is powerful. It promises freedom, spontaneity, and authenticity. But in 2026, The idea that this can be done on $5 a day is a relic from a different economic universe. The brutal reality is that a safe, sustainable, bare minimum budget for most of Europe starts at around $50 to $75 a day. And even that requires discipline and sacrifice. But this isn't meant to be discouraging. It's meant to be empowering. Knowing the real numbers allows you to plan effectively. It allows you to save a realistic amount of money and go into your trip with confidence, not with a fantasy that will shatter the moment you land. Europe is one of the most incredible places on Earth to explore. You can still see it on a budget, and you absolutely should. But let's kill the myth of the $5 day. Let's trade that dangerous fantasy for a realistic plan. Because the goal isn't just to survive the trip, it's to actually live it and remember it for the rest of your life. What's the most you've ever stretched a travel budget? Let me know your own stories and brutal realities in the comments below. If you enjoyed this budget travel content and want to see more, check out my other video on Can You Travel Italy for $25 over here. Safe travels.